Hey y'all, so welcome to my YouTube channel called Wind Down with Ren. I'm so excited that you guys are here with me. We are going to be talking about Queen Esther. So I have a fun fact for you guys. So the book of Esther is the only book in the Bible that does not mention the name God, Lord, or Jesus. But if you read the entire book of Esther, you will see the favor of God and the hand of God throughout Esther's life. So I am going to jump right in. I'm only going to be going over Esther chapter 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then you can read the rest of it on your own to see what happens in the end. So in chapter 1, it opens with the king. He is having a feast. And so he's invited all of the kings, queens, princesses from like the other kingdoms that surround him to come and kind of like just hang out with him, eat some good food, have some drinks or whatever. And so as the night progressed, he invited his queen to his chambers, and she refused to come. And so that made the king very upset. And after that happened, he consulted with his wise counsel to ask them like, hey, what should I do? Kind of like to punish the queen. And someone sent him a decree back, basically stating that he should denounce the queen as his queen, not a decree, so that all the other wives in the area would know like this is not acceptable for queens to be disobedient to their spouse. So that's exactly what he did. And so now the king is without a wife. So they wanted to get the king another wife, and so they sent out another decree to the area just to let all the maidens know, like the virgins know, hey, the king is looking for a spouse. And so this is kind of where Esther and her uncle Mordecai come into the story. So Esther heard about this, her uncle heard about this, and Esther was beautiful and she wanted to go. And so she went, found favor with the king, and like even just going through the process of trying to become the queen, it all worked out in her favor. And so she ended up becoming a queen, which we already know. She became Queen Esther. And after that, at the end of chapter 2, you will see that her uncle is actually serving at the king's gate, and he hears about two men that were trying to actually kill the king. And so Mordecai let Esther know like, hey, there's two guys trying to kill your husband. Esther told her husband, and the two guys were hung. So that's the end of those two guys. But Esther also made sure that her husband, the king, knew that Mordecai is the one who gave him this information. So chapter 3 opens up, and you see where the king promotes Haman to like serve over the people in the palace and things like that. And so one of Haman's requests was that everyone bow down to like worship him basically. And Mordecai refused. He's like, no, like I'm not bowing down. And so that made Haman very upset, because Mordecai would not bow down and serve him. So some kind of way, Haman found out that Mordecai was a Jew. And the interesting thing about this, up until this point, or even a little bit later, the king does not know that Esther is a Jew as well. So Haman basically talks to the king and wants the king to put out this decree for him to be able to kill all the Jews. And that he would give the king 10,000 talents. And so the king agreed and put out this decree. So when Mordecai heard about what Haman wanted to do to the Jews and the decree that went out, which was basically now the law for the Jews to be killed pretty much within a year, he was upset. He tore his clothes. He was wailing along with all the other Jewish people. They were fasting, praying, and just like in mourning during that period. And so word got back to Esther about like her uncle and how he had torn his clothes and things like that. And so she wanted to know like what was going on. So Mordecai had someone take Esther the decree and basically told her, hey, tell Queen Esther she needs to go before the king on our behalf, on behalf of the Jews. And so at first, Esther was just like, no, like it's been past 30 days. The king has not held out his golden scepter. And if he doesn't hold out that scepter and I enter, I could die. And so the turning point for me was, this is probably my favorite scripture in the entire book of Esther. Okay, so Esther chapter 4, verses 14. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So after Esther really thought about this, it was kind of like an enlightened moment. So she basically sent word back to her uncle Mordecai and told him to gather all the Jews together, along with her handmaids and herself, and they were all going to fast for 3 days, 3 nights with no food and no water. And the beautiful thing that Esther said was, if I perish, I perish. So I'm going to end it right there, and you have to read the rest of the book of Esther to find out what happened, if the king accepted her or if he didn't accept her. But I think for me, just reading this an additional time, although I've heard the story about Esther before, Esther chapter 4 verses 14, like talking about you were created for such a time as this. And I can think about in my life as like so many moments I felt like, okay, God, this is part of my purpose, whether I'm encouraging somebody or I'm doing a blog and someone said this really helped me, or I'm able to witness to somebody, spread the good news of God, pray for somebody. You just think about all those little moments, like, God, you created me for those little moments. And so that just brings a whole nother level of gratefulness to me. And then for her to even say, if I perish, I perish. Like, Esther was sold out. She realized that no matter what happened, if this did not work out, she was going to die. She was going to be killing off her generation, of her family and things like that. So she had to be able to step up and take a stand. So I think about, like, what have you been able to take a stand for in your life, and just really realize, like, God, let your will be done despite of whatever I feel like I have to go through. Like, you created me for this purpose. So that is all I have. This one is a little bit longer. I could have went on for probably like 20 minutes talking about Esther, but please send me any other topic requests that you have. I'll be happy to get them featured, read the story, and put them on my biblical story time. So until next time, enjoy the rest of your Thursday and have a great night.